living with that. That's what we're going for. It's cool. Okay, wicked. Right, thank you very much for the warm welcome. I am Lewis Morris. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Middlesbrough Front End. And I don't mean that in some like really deep emotional way. I just mean it in a way that I've been having my brains picked by Hull Front End since 2023 on LinkedIn. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'm really happy to see another conference in another small northern city. Is it a city in Hull? City, yes. The city of Hull. But no, I'm genuinely honoured to be here. So this is the story, the life and death of a developer conference, and it's about Middlesbrough Front End, from start to its eventual demise in 2025. So I know what you're thinking, but why? I mean, look at that beautiful scenic view of Teesside there. You've got pollution, more pollution, and a bridge. On the training, I was debating whose bridge is better. Is it Hull's Humber Bridge or the Transporter Bridge? And I arrived at the conclusion that was probably the Transporter Bridge is better, because, yeah, it's from Middlesbrough. So, but why? Why would you start a developer conference in Middlesbrough? It's a pretty niche place. As I say, it's very industrial. But it does have a really thriving tech scene, which not a lot of people know about, and it's mostly focused on games, to be fair to it. But it does have a lot of agencies. Middlesbrough had one of the only WordPress VIP agencies in the country, Big Bike Creative at one point. So there is a lot going on in terms of tech, but it's also very out the way. I mean, it took me the best part of 3 hours to get to Hull on a train yesterday, thanks to Northern Rail. That was delightful. Middlesbrough's not much better. There's one train a day to London each way. You can get a train to Leeds every hour, I suppose. Other than that, you've got to make the long, arduous drive up the N19, which isn't the most delightful of roads. But we are what we are. We're proud of who we are. And we thought we can make it work, right? Naive belief that everything will work, it'll all work out. And so we set about. The goal was quite simple. We wanted to start a conference. We wanted to bring speakers, like the speakers we've got today, to Middlesbrough, to our community, and to build something special. So we didn't start with a conference. We actually started with a meetup, and this is back in 2019. There's a place called Hit the Bar in Middlesbrough, and it's normally only open when the football's on. And I say we, there was me, myself, and Jamie, who started Middlesbrough Front End back in 2019. We came about, we were like, right, we're going to do something. We want to do an event. We're sick of going to Newcastle on the train. It takes an hour and a half. We're sick of going to Leeds. It takes an hour and a half. Let's just do something in Middlesbrough. And we had a friend who ran an event called Refresh Teesside, and Refresh was a global thing. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it before. I think it started in San Francisco. It was essentially just a networking event. There was no real topics. There was no real agenda. Everyone just got together, had a good time, had a bit of a talk. And we spoke to our friend James, who used to run that. Kind of pitched him our idea and also said, we think it's the most stupid idea ever. No one's going to come to a developer meetup in Middlesbrough because there isn't enough developers. And he just messaged back saying, just do it and stop being idiots. So 2019, we did our first meetup, 55 sign-ups. As you can see, it was fairly packed out for a little bar on a weeknight in Middlesbrough. Really good crowd. And it sort of took off from there. Throughout 2019, we had more and more meetups, pretty much every other month. Similar turnout, 50-ish people to most of them, which was really cool. We started building a really strong community, familiar faces. We kind of had, like I said, Big Bite was a big company. VisualSoft at the time in Middlesbrough were a huge e-commerce company, so they had a lot of developers come in. And it started to like really get some good traction. And with the traction, we started getting the community. And like I say, we had the people come from Big Bite, come from VisualSoft, come from all these little agencies around Middlesbrough, and we were building this really good community of people, familiar faces. And it turned into more people that come in, not necessarily for the talks, but just to see one another, discuss what's going on in between their companies, and just more of a general get-together. I think everyone likes free beer and free pizza, and it's a pretty good reason to get people together. And like I say, 2019, there was 40, 50 people coming to every meetup. We were flying. We were quite literally on top of the world. We thought, yeah, we're smashing this. Next year is going to be mega. Right. Mega, yeah. So, as I say, we were on top of the world. We had plans for a conference in 2020. And something happened, something quite small. Actually, it didn't really affect too many of us, did it? And it really put a spanner in the works. It was fairly horrible. like I say, we had plans for a conference. We were really excited. The meetups were, they were flying. We were doing so well. And then, lockdown happened, and we were pretty deflated. We didn't know what to do. We had to kind of think on our feet, to be honest. And that's when we came up with the idea of, well, if we can't do Middlesbrough Front End in person, we'll do Middlesbrough Front End online instead. So throughout 2020, we did, I think it was about 3 in total, online meetups where we got speakers to basically broadcast live. It was essentially Twitch, so developer conference over Twitch, which was cool, and it brought a real new dynamic to what was at the time a very community-focused event. Obviously, it was called Middlesbrough Front End, and a lot of people were like, you're very focused in on one area. It's Middlesbrough. People are not going to associate this with being a bigger, more global thing. But it worked. We had speakers from Sanity, I think Cloudinary, a couple of other really big companies, and we could get these speakers because it was virtual, it was over the internet. And that also brought us to new audiences. We ended up meeting people from Canada, America, all over Europe who used to tune in and kind of watch. So whilst it was bad, it was also really good in another sense because it opened doors that weren't there previously, and it got the ball rolling for actually, maybe that conference thing wasn't too bad. It was just the wrong time. Like, we're all trapped inside. We can't do anything. So after 2020, we didn't actually do anything for a while. 2021 was weird. We toyed with the ideas of meetups around like lockdowns and all the other things that were going on, but we just felt like people weren't ready. People didn't seem ready. We talked to people who used to come, and they were like, I work from home, and I'd have to get in the car, and I'd have to drive into Middlesbrough, and I don't really want to do that. And I'm like, fair enough. So nothing really happened in 2021. It was a fairly quiet year. We just backed off. We let it be. 2022, we thought, right, everyone's like going to be somewhat over this now. Everyone wants to get out of the house. They're gagging to come and spend time at a meetup of people who they've not seen in a while. We were terribly wrong. We were really wrong. We had a really great meetup planned. We had really great speakers planned. I think we had around 50 or 60 signups, and I have no idea why, and I still wonder why today no one came. I think there was about 5 people in total came. Maybe it was too soon. Maybe people didn't feel comfortable being back in the room together. I don't know what it was. But that was a real blow, a real kick. And it kind of left us a bit shell-shocked, to be honest, because we've gone from 50 people turning up, the similar number online, if not more online watching, to, we can't even get 5 people through a door at this point, so it was getting really difficult. So, off the back of that, it come to 2023, and we thought, right, we're just going to have to go for it. We're going to have to do the conference. It's now or never. The meetups just aren't working, and if we don't roll the dice now, we'll probably never roll the dice. So we just thought, let's just gung-ho, let's go for it, let's see what happens. So we set off to build Middlesbrough Front End 2023, and we made quite a few mistakes on the way there. So the things we actually got really well is, we were very quick to find a good venue, to pick dates, to start finding some really good speakers who were up for speaking at the conference. That all went well. The biggest mistake that we made initially was actually with tickets. So we did the tried and tested thing that every conference does, early bird and then standard ticket. Early birds are £85, which, as cheap as you can make it realistically, and they absolutely flew out the door. We got rid of all of them super quick, and we were really pumped. And then we made the cardinal mistake of making the standard tickets £165, and no one had ever been to one of our conferences. We'd never hosted a conference before. And you were also asking people to pay £165 to come through a conference in Middlesbrough, which is quite the ask, given the demographic of the area itself. So we just had to, we had to bite the bullet. We had to admit that we've really messed up at this point. We'd overcharged, we'd asked too much, and we didn't have the trust of people, and that's what we needed, the trust to say, give us £165 and we'll give you a really good event in return, but we didn't do that. So to the about half a dozen people, or maybe a little bit more, who actually paid £165, we refunded them the difference. I think it was like £8 each. Bit the bullet, took the hit, and went back to £85. And for MFE 2023, every ticket was £85, which in the end, was a good thing. Because on July the 19th, 2023, we had the first ever Middlesbrough Front End conference, and that's in the Middlesbrough Town Hall crypt. So that was a set-out for us. We'd set a target. We didn't want to fill the entire room because we'd never run an event that size before, right? So we thought if we get 200 tickets sold, that'd be mega. We'll probably just never sell 200 tickets, but if we do, that'll be mega. We sold 200 tickets. We filled the room, which was excellent. The stress building up to this was insane. And it's something that if you speak to any conference or even like event person, they'll probably tell you, but I'd say in the 2 weeks up to this event, I did not sleep very well at all. You're all over the place. You're wondering, a speaker's going to turn up, are people's flights going to get cancelled? Is food going to turn up? Is the stage going to turn up? Our screen that you can see there, that turned up only an hour before the venue wanted to kick us out. There was just so much stress. So it was really nervous. I woke up at about 5 a.m., I think, that day, after being out the night before with the speakers for the speakers' dinner. So I was feeling a little bit worse for wear, and I was a little bit nervous about what lay ahead. And I got to the venue around 7 a.m., and honestly, apart from the day flying by, I think the only day that's gone faster than the first conference was probably my wedding day, which people say that flies by. Well, that flies by as well doing your first conference. It went off without a hitch. Literally, it was perfect. Everything that we planned worked out perfectly, and it was just a terrific day. Apart from the chairs, and I'll come back to the chairs later on. So our keynote speaker for the conference was actually Jake Archibald. And for those who don't know, Jake went to Teesside Uni years and years ago. And we'd actually had him back already to do a meetup at Teesside Uni, and he'd done a lecture to the students there. And we'd sort of just shot him an email out of the cold and was just like, we know you came a while back, but how would you fancy coming back and speaking at our conference? And he was, anyone who's ever met Jake, he's probably one of the nicest people you can meet. He's a lovely man. He was like, yeah, I love it. I love a Parmo. I love O'Connell's, the Irish pub in Middlesbrough. I'll see you there. So Jake was the keynote, and at the end of his talk, he had a little bit of a speech, and I took this part from it, but I won't read it out, you can read it yourself. But it was in the context of, this conference was really expensive, really cheap. It was £85. And I think when Jake seen the price, he was like, fair play to these guys, they're trying to do something different. They're trying to do something, in an area that maybe you wouldn't normally do something. But it can't be that good for £85. But hey, big words from the big man himself. So for me, that was a real pinch moment because I was someone who grew up in an era where Jake was pretty much on every YouTube video or every bloody tutorial that you watched when trying to learn things on the internet. So to have someone of his stature come to our conference and say that was a real honor. So I think overall, with running conferences, the highs are just huge. You get to get a lot of great speakers in the room together. You get to pack out rooms. I mean, obviously the town hall wasn't full there, but the next year was 250 people, and you can see Lou doing their talk there, and that was in 2024, and the room was full back to front. You couldn't squeeze any more people in if you tried. So to see that and to see something you built is really exciting. We had some great socials, some great after parties after the conferences, and a lot of people got to meet each other. A lot of connections got forged. I know a couple of people who got jobs off the back of coming to the conference. So it was like really, really good to see that, and it's a thing that you're really proud of. And in 2025, at the bottom there, we hosted Middlesbrough Front End at the Riverside Stadium. For me, as a massive Borough fan, that was like a bit of a pinch moment. We just got free reign to do whatever we want in the stadium, which was really cool, and people got to roam around. So yeah, the highs are the highest of highs. The chairs are the lowest of lows. The foreshadowing of that tweet is just so unfortunate. It's not funny. So in 2023, the biggest complaint thing was the chairs were uncomfy. We sat in these chairs for 8 hours. There were plastic chairs that you probably see in like a hotel lobby or something like that. And to be fair to people, I get it. They were really uncomfortable. So for 2024, we were like, right, we're going to fix the chairs, right? The biggest complaint is the chairs. We'll fix the chairs. I trawled the internet. I'm not even joking. I trawled the internet to find somewhere that you can hire chairs that are not wedding chairs, because I didn't want like 250 people sat on wedding chairs. for the day, because they're even worse than bloody plastic chairs. We hired the chairs. They were not very cheap, if I'm honest. And what was the most complained about thing in 2024? The chairs. So I've learned you just can't win with chairs. And, to the lows, and this is something I was just talking about with the guys from Hull Front End, it never gets easier as it goes on. Cold emails to sponsors dropping out last minute. If I had £1 for every sponsor, it was like, we'll sponsor, and then they just never return your email. I'd probably not be stood up here now. I'd be running Middlesbrough Front End 2026. Chasing attendees, I think, we all want everyone to come back and build that community and keep being part of it, but to get people back for next year, it is difficult. And in an industry like tech, one thing that I didn't really realize or think about at the time, when you're collecting everyone's email address when you sign up, you think, right, we've got a point of contact for everyone now. But in tech, and especially in 2023, 24, people swap jobs like it was going out of fashion. So we'd have 250 emails, and by the next year, 70 of those emails just didn't work anymore. They just bounced straight back because people had moved on jobs or they'd stopped freelancing or whatever. So whilst they were there at the conference, I had a good day, and they were like, I want to come back. They were impossible to get hold of, which was really, really painful. Venue issues, we're in this lovely venue today, and everything's gone really smoothly, as far as I can tell, so big props to the venue and the team for that. But we had countless issues that I don't think people ever seen them, but you see them, and I turned up and there's things are missing. Like I said, the screen didn't turn up until we were about to get kicked out of the venue, food, passive-aggressive security stuff, you name it. Like every issue you can think of, you have to deal with it. Budget pressure is probably the biggest thing, to be honest. I'll get into this a little bit more, but it's a huge financial burden to run a conference. It's not cheap. I personally want to pay everyone who's there, every speaker who's come in. I have a job, I'm a freelancer. If I'm not at work, I don't get paid. And that's the same as a lot of speakers who work for themselves or have their own businesses. If they're not actively working, they're not getting paid. So I want to make sure someone, they at least get compensated fairly. But that has a huge budget pressure if you've got 8 speakers who need paying. An unexpected side quest as well. The amount of times I drove from Middlesbrough to Newcastle Airport isn't even funny. Like 24 hours before the conference, and I'm sat in the meet and greet at Newcastle Airport picking speakers up. And while that's lovely, and you get to really meet some lovely people and have good, a good natter with them in the car on the way back, it's a distraction you could really do without. And like I say, going back to budget pressures, if you have to add in 3, 4, 5 taxis, that really eats away at your budget. The last 2 speak for themselves, like I say, sleepless nights and hair loss. Jamie probably suffered more than me. I think he's at the point where he just needs to shave it all off now, and I can say that because he's not here. But I had a few bald patches on the back of my head from just the pure level of stress of dealing with things. And that gets onto like the hidden cost. So building a community in general just doesn't come for free. You pay with so much of your time, your evenings, your weekends, your attention. I was working a full-time job trying to run a conference, and I'd be up till like after o'clock in the morning. And bearing in mind, when we had the first Middlesbrough Front End, my youngest son was born like 2 months before. So I wasn't sleeping great anyway. And at the same time, you're trying to run this conference. But you pay, it's a tax that you pay, right? It's just part and parcel of doing it. There's nothing you can really do to avoid it, I'm afraid. It's just part of the thing that comes with running a conference. And that kind of brings me on to this slide of you've got to really love the event because it won't love you back. And maybe that's a bit philosophical and deep, I don't know, or a bit cringe. My wife would probably say it gives her the ick, but there you go. But it's a labor of love. Honestly, it is. If you don't love it, you can't do it because it just, when you're on top of the world and everything's going really well, it's amazing. But when your back's turned, it'll stab you in the back as quick as it can. The amount, like I said, the amount of little things that pop up out of nowhere, it really is. It really is a difficult thing to deal with. And obviously, part of the reason I'm here today is because Hull is like Middlesbrough, although Hull's a city and Middlesbrough's a town, although one of the biggest towns in the country. Smaller places make it so much harder. So the same reasons that we wanted to bring people to Middlesbrough is the same reason that made it so difficult it's hard to get there. There's like one direct train a day to London. Other than that, it's trains to sort of Manchester, Leeds, York. So you can't, getting people up, it's multiple trains, it's a lot of effort. I understand it. People are not going to want to travel in because it's really difficult to get there. And it also brings its own errors, its own issues. There's less people in general in the area, less catchment area. There's less hotels. There's only 2 hotels in Middlesbrough, so obviously they can price gouge and control the market if they want, which they do, and they charge quite a lot for a hotel room in Middlesbrough. There's less local sponsors. I think the guys here today have been blessed that there's some quite big companies around the whole area who can chime in. In Middlesbrough, not so much. The big companies are still very industrial focused, or like I say, game focused, so a developer conference doesn't really appeal to them. And this also gives you less margin for error because your base costs have then got higher. You're paying your speakers, you're paying extra for hotels, and you're struggling to get sponsors. And where we got really lucky with the first 2 years of Middlesbrough Front End was the local authority and the council were really encouraging and really supportive, and they actually funded the cost of the venue for the first 2 years. But in the third year, they just threw the towel in. They felt there was better things to spend money on, and you can go look online at what better things to spend the money on in Middlesbrough. It's not very good things. And they basically stopped supporting not just our event, but other events as well. And it really had a detrimental effect to the town because people had to go out of the town to bring sponsors in, when actually, if the town wants to bring people to the town, they should be helping to fund that. We actually had a speaker who ran a conference in Portugal, and he was telling us that he's sort of local government, state government, I think, in Portugal. They basically funded the entire thing. So he had this like whole weekend conference, food, like proper food, meals, the venue, everything was basically funded by the regional council there because they were so desperate to bring people to that area. And for me as an organizer, like I wish we had that attitude in the UK because it'd actually be, a really positive thing. And I think this applies to everywhere. Typical that. I'm moving house next week, and I said, don't ring me today, I'm really busy. And what did they do? They ring me right in the middle of my talk. I said that'd happen. Yeah, I wish the UK would have this more progressive attitude towards it. I think it maybe exists in London, but I know it doesn't really exist in Leeds, I don't think either, and some other big cities. So, it's something that needs to change. Just one more thing, or one more year, I suppose, is it's addictive, right? I've said all these negative things, and you're probably sat there thinking, Lewis, are you stupid? Like, why did you keep doing that if it's so painful, right? If it's so hard, it's so detrimental. The success makes it hard to stop. Because, like I say, you build that community. People expect it to be there next year, and you do get the really good sponsors who are sat there saying, so what's next? What's next year? Can we come? And you get a responsibility that is, honestly, you get a weird guilt. When we stopped doing it, I was left with a really weird guilt. I felt like I was not letting myself down. I felt like I was letting other people down, letting maybe the town down itself. And that's a really weird thing to take on your shoulders, especially when it was quite a prominent thing in such a small town. But after 2023, we kept going. 2024 there, so we filled the entire town hall again, hired more screens, because that was one of the feedback. There's the cursed blue chairs that haunted my sleep for years and years to come. 2024 was great. I think Harry spoke at Middlesbrough Front End in 2024, actually. It was our highest revenue conference, and I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but it was in the best part of like 25, 30,000 pound in revenue, something like that. It was also our least profitable conference. We sold out. We had an amazing lineup, but we went too hard. We had the mistakes in 2023, and we were like, we don't want to repeat them mistakes in 2024. So we went so hard of not doing that we forgot that actually you've got to, make this financially viable. And then 2025, we still loved MFE. Obviously, 2024 was huge for us, despite not making the money that we were anticipating to make from it. But 2025 just wasn't getting easier. It was actually getting harder, if anything. Ticket sales were just really difficult that year. And you can probably attribute that to LLMs and all the other such things that were going on in the world. But sponsorship was hard, ticket sales were hard, and on paper, the conference was profitable. We did make a profit. but the personal toll of that year just really wasn't healthy. It was just very emotional and very heavy. And I think for us, all three of us had our own businesses who were organising it. There was myself, Jamie, and Jimmy at that point. We all had our own businesses, our own families to focus on. We've all got kids, we've all got wives. The cracks were sort of appearing in the wall at this point of what was going on. So we blew the final whistle, which was kind of apt because we're at the Riverside Stadium for the final conference. And it was a tough year. We hosted it, and obviously it went really well. We went out on a high. We raised some good money for the MFC Foundation. I imagine Hull City have something probably similar, which is like a community-based project that involves football in the communities in deprived areas. We'd done 6 years of Middlesbrough Front End, 3 years, 3 conferences on that. 600 attendees in total when you tally it all up. 30 speakers. And I think the biggest takeaway from me was MFE didn't die, it didn't fail, it didn't go bankrupt or anything like that. We just sort of learned that the personal cost of doing it, it was the wrong thing to do, it was the wrong thing to continue. It wouldn't have been healthy. So if I've not put you off completely making a community for yourself in your area, just some of my advice, and I won't go through all of them, but just, start small in your ego once. We wanted to go big from day one, and in hindsight, smaller the better. Avoid underpricing out of guilt, and I know I spoke about overpricing, but I've seen conferences underpriced as well. You're worth more than £40 a ticket, £50 a ticket. It's a lot of work. Things aren't cheap, people aren't cheap. So just, make sure you know your worth. The ticket wave, and this is something that never goes away, and you can speak to any conference organizer about this, and I think some conferences have actually been cancelled recently because of it. They will never sell out on day one, no matter how good your lineup is, no matter how good your offering is, they will not sell out on day one. I could pull up all the graphs that I've got from when we did the conference, and you'll see the spike 7 to 14 days before, where there's no ticket sales for like 30 days, and then we sell like 100 in 2 weeks. You've got to really be willing to ride the wave and just hope that you stay on it before it crashes down, because that tends to be what happens. Like I said, don't try and make things bigger than the last one. It can bite you in the arse quite big. And reach out to others for advice. Like obviously the guys from Hull reached out to me for advice, and I've shared, my highs, my lows, my tips and tricks that we have. But I've spoke to Josh, who used to run All Day Here. I've spoke to, so many people who've run conferences around the UK. The best thing you can do is just go and ask for advice. In my experience, people who run events are some of the friendliest people you can come across. In tech, at least anyway, they will literally give you so much time for nothing in return. They just want to see you succeed. And if you are wanting to do things and you build your community, let your community help. We had so many people offer to volunteer, and stupidly we turned it down, and I wish we never did, because actually it's a real big help if someone's at the doors doing tickets, if someone's shepherding people to dinner, things like that. They'll quite happily do that for a free ticket in return, and that ticket doesn't cost you anything, and it buys you a lot of time back as a person. Advice for attendees, companies. Obviously, you guys are all here today, so you've all done the right thing, I suppose, but buy your tickets early and sponsor early. Like I say, wait until the end is so painful. For us, just that big screen that you could see on that picture, I think that was £1,500 to hire for 2 days, so that we had to sell 15 tickets just to pay for that screen. When you look at it in that perspective, it does make you think like, actually, yeah, we need to buy these tickets early. Share it, find a way, your network. Obviously, send all of your team. I mean, not all people like going to conferences, but I think it's good to just get out the office or get out your house, if that's where you work now. If you've got the ability to, I know there's some big companies in Hull, offer venues, volunteers. If you've got a big commercial office where your company is based and they've got a big meeting room you can maybe use for a meetup or like a workshop or something like that, offer that space up, because honestly, it's so appreciated, and same with volunteers. And the last bullet point, and this isn't a dig at anyone in the room, so don't worry, but don't wait until the goodbye post to tell everyone on LinkedIn how much it mattered. We had so many people who didn't come to the conference. Maybe came to one in 2023, but didn't come to the successive ones. When we said, we're done, we're not doing this anymore, the first thing they did was go on LinkedIn and make it about them and how they felt it was detrimental to the area that it wasn't happening anymore. If you feel that strongly about it, that you want to get likes on LinkedIn, actually turn up to the event, because that is the most beneficial thing you can do. But the legacy of MFE does live on. People found new friends, like I say, people found jobs. We got some of the best speakers to come from all over the UK. A lot of developers locally, and not just in Middlesbrough, but like in the wider northeast, saw it was possible to have really good events in that area. And the developer community had something that you could be really proud of. And I would say all the advice, I hope it helps people build something better. I'm getting tight on time. I've got one little game that I'd like to play. So when we used to start MFE, we used to play a game called Where in the World. So I want everyone to put their hands up, and we're going to play a game of Where in the World. So if you put your hands up, if you came from within a 10-mile radius today, can you put your hands down? 20 miles? 40 miles? Ooh, 50? 60? So, we've got left. We've got 2 left. 70? I think we've got a winner. We've got a winner. So it used to be, where have you come from today? County Durham. So you're probably the furthest away. So we used to do Where in the World, so I'll sort you out a prize. I've got no Middlesbrough Front End prizes, but I'll send you a Middlesbrough Front End prize of some variety. I was just thinking it was one of my favorite things we used to do. I think Ukraine was the winner at Middlesbrough Front End. The guy came on a bus. Dedication. Absolute dedication. Really do appreciate it. So my ultimate takeaway is just do it. Yeah, it's painful. Yes, it can be hard. But honestly, if you love some things like I loved Middlesbrough Front End, you kind of put that to one side. Just do it, but just do it in a way that doesn't cost you your sanity. Delegate, outsource, find them, sponsors. That can really help you. Hope my talk was helpful today and hasn't put you off completely going to start your own communities where you live. I was Lewis Morris. If you want to talk to me about conferences, and my other interests are basically planes and guitars and watches, come and find me on the lunch break and we'll talk about them things. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.